Hello, welcome. Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm glad you are here. This is going to be chapter 2. We are going to be briefly talking about narcissism, so echoist versus narcissist. So what is that? It's sort of a new term that was coined, I would say, more recently. Everyone's heard of a narcissist, but an echoist is more so the complete opposite of a narcissist. It's about putting your like pleasing everyone else to a very high level, much like a narcissist takes from people. An echoist would give to someone or a group of people or everyone around them more so than they take. They're both are on either extremes. They're both on the they were both bad essentially. Well, it can be bad because a narcissist, obviously they're hurting those around them. An echoist is hurting themselves. So both you want to find a happy medium really. What are we moving on to? Sympathy versus empathy. That is a key component of understanding narcissism. Sympathy is sort of more from a distance, like you're feeling sort of sorry, sort of feeling bad for a person who's going through a tough time, but it's more from like a sort of a distance. Empathy is more you're sort of in the shoes of someone, you are sort of relating them to on a more deeper level, a more understanding. Which is why some people don't generate empathy until they've been through the situation themselves, and then they have a better understanding of what people have been through, the tough times they've been, mistreatment they've received. But yeah, sometimes you do have to go through those things to actually understand it, and unfortunately, that means going through the situation to understand what people have been through. So yeah, it just does that really. Yeah, there's some more. These are the AI ones. If you've been to the last episode, I briefly touched on these. They're just sort of some are okay. They're just a bit of random sort of filler to read whilst I'm also speaking about the subject, and just some like examples. But yeah, I mean, I think the world needs more empathy, in my opinion. I've left a comment on this on Lewis Rossmann's video a while back. But yeah, I will play the video in a second. We did play it in the teaser video if you've not watched that. But yeah, a lack of empathy is the cause of a lot of problems in the world, and if we had more of it individually, I think it would be more understanding and a better place to live in, really. But yeah, I'll just play this video now. It's only a 3-minute video, but it's very good.
The East Village is a beautiful neighborhood. It attracts people from all around the world that are doing something unconventional but interesting with their life in a non-judgmental environment. And it's great. But unfortunately, it also attracts some of the most self-righteous, sanctimonious, pompous, miserable little yuppie pricks that you will ever meet in your entire life. People who just have soothing out of their pores their superiority and the importance of themselves and the importance of their time. And this occasionally manifests itself when 3 or 4 people come to get something fixed at the same time. Let's say 3 or 4 people come in at the exact same time on a day that a business is short-staffed. They will do something like, so it's, at least one of them will look around and see that there are 4 other people there and be totally oblivious to this fact, totally oblivious to the idea that somebody else may exist outside of them and go, so it's going to be 15, 20 minutes, right? And you go, well, it's going to be 30 minutes because there's 2 other people here. And they go, what do you mean? You said 20 minutes. You told me 20 minutes over the phone. It says 20 minutes on your site. Why are you lying to me? Why are you making this up? I want a discount. I want to speak to a manager. Fuck you. Fuck people like you. Fuck people who like you. And above all, fuck the people that are responsible for you, whether it is your parents, your family, your friends, or whoever it is that abused you and turned you into the little self-righteous, self-centered piece of garbage that you are. I don't judge people based on their race, on their sex, on their ethnicity, on their religion, or sexual orientation. What I do judge people on is who they are, their character. And when somebody acts like that, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that I am a better human being than they are, that they are a low form of pond scum. And the difference, the key difference between a yuppie and a human being is that the yuppie, whereas the human being uses common sense understanding, the yuppie will use their temperament and criticism and negativity to throw a tantrum. Instead of using common sense and understanding, there is a temperament and criticism and passive-aggressive attitudes. That's in my opinion, the best way to distinguish a yuppie from a human being. Yes, you know what? You're right. I lied. I made all that shit up. It actually always takes an hour or two. It's not that the technician called in sick because his daughter is in the hospital, and that the receptionist is on her first lunch break after 6 hours of work, and that I was in the bathroom all at the same time that these 3 people walked in. No, I actually contrived this just to waste your precious time. Congratulations. You figured out my scam. Do you want a ribbon? Do you want a gold star? No. Fuck you. And fuck your discount.
Well, yeah, no truer words have ever been said. I mean, look, he's been spitting facts. When was that? 11 years ago. That was more true. Well, it's true then. It's true now. Yeah, it's people getting enabled over the years. That also, I'll preach onto that. So, what are sort of the core pillars of narcissism? It's one sort of deep-rooted shame and insecurity. So they can't sort of face themselves, so they kind of project their own sort of sense of high worth and this character or persona that they sort of pursue, but it's sort of like deep down at the deep root, they can't bear to face their inner self. So that's a lot where it stems from. Also, it's laziness is a key component in my opinion. Like narcissism is all about sort of min-maxing. Well, not just life; it's also min-maxing other people. It's putting the bare minimum into a relationship and taking the maximum they can out of it. That's how I see it. Which also happens in the workplace. Just, sort of squeezing, employees, people below them for the maximum sort of gain, whilst putting in the minimum amount of support and support networks in. I have touched on narcissistic abuse in my workplace in the first one of the series. I will jump into it more later on. We've already touched on lack of empathy, the sort of inability to understand from someone else's point of view, taking more than giving, fairly straightforward. Also, the inability to relinquish power, that is also a key thing in my opinion. They like to sort of micromanage everything, and I think it stems from a lack of trust in people. They don't trust other people to do the job, so they want to do it, but in doing so, it doesn't instill faith into the person doing the job. It makes jobs harder. It makes everyone stressed. You need to put trust into people, and people will do the job. But yeah, they can't let go of that power. That's what I mean. Lack of accountability, that is also a big thing. It's straightforward, really. Well, they like to take the forefront of the credit when it's good, when it's praised, but then when it comes to the bad shit, they they always seem to just disappear. Unfortunately. So what are the common themes around narcissists? These are some of the things I've come across. Well, that playing the victim, that's an obvious one. But every time they're telling a story or they're in a scenario, it's always them that's them being affected. It's not about others being affected, and they're trying to garner sympathy from other people, and that's usually how they gain their sort of energy and how it sort of bolsters them upwards. Forgetting names, you might have come across that. I mean, this is not to say people who forget names are narcissists. That is not. I'm sure these are common themes which may imply someone's narcissistic. along with other traits, but just someone forgetting names does not make someone a narcissist. But yeah, forgetting names, I don't know if this is because they sort of see people as objects, or they're just not memorable to them, or I'm not sure. It just seems, and it's not just forgetting names. They make a point about forgetting names, or like not being able to remember names. That's one of the things I've come across. Like, oh, I'm terrible with names. Or you know me, I can't remember. And I'm like, are you even trying? It's not that hard. There's nobody dropping out of school and jobs. This stems from, I think, rejection, inability to handle rejection, and then being like shut down, and then it sort of makes them want to push more because they've been challenged and they've been told no, and they don't like being told no, and then this almost forces them to go bigger and bigger. You know, common thing like dictators, even like celebrities or some of these online influencer type people, or even, you know, people in the medical fields, like going to like sort of universities, or they didn't get in, or and they always seem to gloss over that, well, not their failure in a sense, but they say they were trying to get in a university, they'll, you know, they'll casually block all the information of why they didn't get in, and sort of spin it in a way that sounds positive. Like, oh yeah, we went to, oh, I'm a professional, you know, biologist or something like that. No, I can't really explain, but you know what I mean. Like, they sort of just tailor and craft the story in a way to benefit them and to make them seem more professional than they are, or more expertise than they have. This is another, needing to have their name plastered on everything. I mean, I've found a few examples of this. Again, it's not like everyone that has the, but like they'll make like several companies, and it always needs to have their name on it, or their face, or their logo, or something. Which it's, well, again, it's sort of a trait along with the other traits of narcissism. Just because someone wants their name on something doesn't make them a narcissist, but it's just something I've noticed. Not listening to your advice and actions. Yeah, that's, well, they'll, and it's not like unsolicited advice. It's like genuine helpful advice you're sort of giving them, but they just, I don't know if they actively choose not to bother, or the problem I've got with it is if it's a useful advice I've been giving them, giving it to someone like a narcissist, you know, I'm giving that advice to save them time and me time later. It annoyed me to hell when I give them the advice, and then, you know, days later, weeks later, they come around and do the same thing, and I'm like, I've told you like what it is to do. Obviously in a polite way, you know. But I don't know if they just choose not to actively take on board the advice, or they just do it deliberately just to fuck people off. I don't know. But another one, cutting corners. This happens not just with the narcissists themselves, but in an effort to appease the narcissists, people below working around them have to cut corners to keep up to the busy demands, and the high demands and the busy sort of schedule to keep things. But in doing so, that's that can lead to some catastrophic failures in history. I think we'll touch on that later on in the series. But yeah, it can be minor things, but some of these minor things can add up. And like I say, it's like I'm all about saving time. So if it's cutting corners that's going to drastically affect something negatively down the line, then it's not good. And cutting corners, it's going to lead. It's going to set you up for failure, basically. But we've got some, like I said, I've got some of the diagrams. Echoist is the sort of, well, it's good, but it's obviously bad on the extreme ends. but I'm just using red and green just to highlight. But yeah, if you do a more narcissistic action, it's making you more of a narcissist. You're sort of growing. Everyone's on it's all a spectrum, really. Like I say, so the more narcissistic actions you do, the more you are pointed towards the narcissistic direction. But if you do, a good thing, then it's obviously the more they're weighted, so the more towards the middle, sort of minor things, more at the ends, it's more of a extreme. But yeah, it's all about the actions you do and the actions that people see, and those that are either benefiting from you or not benefiting from your actions. But yeah, the more negative actions, the more you're going to be in the narcissist category. And it's all about finding the balance. It's, you want to be helpful to people, but you do have to help yourself as well. You don't want to be an echoist, which is what I learned, people pleasing, getting out of the habit, being able to say no. But yeah, even if a lot of small action, if a narcissist does even the smallest little good actions, it doesn't make them any less of a narcissist in a way. Maybe a few more, but even just a couple of good things they do here and there doesn't make them any less of a narcissist, in my opinion. But the trouble is with narcissists, it's each person they see is a different persona. They interact with people like in public and whatnot. Oh, they can seem right, nice and friendly, and then behind the closed doors, they're absolutely awful. But yeah, and then enablers. I mean, this is the sort of third element of this Echoist versus Narcissist. You can't really talk about Echoism and Narcissism without enablers, in my opinion. Well, you can, but enablers play a huge part of it. And I mean, enablers can enable Echoists, like they can enable Narcissists. But that's not usually how it goes. Usually what happens is enablers tend to, in at least today's society, they tend to push everything towards the right, towards the narcissist, and enabling narcissists, which is why so many, like CEOs and whatnot are all in power and stuff like that. So but yeah. And some enablers don't know they're enabling. And enabling exists on a spectrum as well. That is because I was with for my narcissistic bot, and just by working for him, I was technically enabling his actions. I was, not saying no. I mean, I did leave eventually, but I was an enabler. But now I've sort of, realized that I've got more understanding. I'm trying to help do the opposite. So I'm shoving things to the left, essentially. And it's same with things like MLMs, multi-level marketing. Because that is another video to come up. But people in MLMs, I mean, they are sort of indirectly enabling these things. Which, I mean, a lot of MLMs are crumbling as of late, moving to affiliate marketing. But they've been propped up by sort of people, obviously put low, but they didn't know they were enabling. That's the key thing. But when people get out, that is why there is a lot of anti-MLM content on YouTube, because they saw the damage that they were doing to people and around them, and they feel bad and they want to make anti-MLM content to do the opposite effect. That is, similar to me when I was enabling my boss, and now I'm sort of working to not enable narcissists. But sometimes it's, it's more about sort of raising awareness to this kind of things. But yeah, society can enable narcissists. This is another Louis Rossmann video, Bootlickers. enablers, yeah, they make the world worse. We'll watch this for a bit.
Today, I'd like to follow up on a video that I did a few days ago, BMW SaaS model. SaaS usually means software as a service, where instead of owning the software, you pay a monthly fee for it. Whether or not you think that's a good thing, I personally don't like it as much, but I understand how some businesses, in order to keep adding features and support the software and make a living, they can't just deal with a one lump sum payment. They need to charge you every month. Here, where it gets ridiculous, suspension as a service, where the car comes with all of the hardware necessary for you to have a particular suspension, but if you want to use it, you have to go to the BMW App Store, because cars have apps now, and then after you go to the BMW App Store, you either pay a monthly fee for it, or you could pay a lump sum up front to get your suspension. You could pay a monthly fee to get access to the hardware that's in your car. Suspension as a service. Now, one of the things I've said in other videos is that the reason the world is the way it is often not because of some crazy red pill conspiracy. It's because of us. When we talk about a lot of the data mining business models, is that really because of some evil conspiracy, or is it because we chose it? Back in 2004, most Americans were more than happy to give up their rights to privacy so to get 1 gigabyte of email. Like 1 gigabyte is all it took for most people to give up their privacy and allow the ad bots to scan through everything in your email so that they can advertise to you based on personal data that Google was sucking up from you based on your personal private conversations. Google has a complete profile on you based on your private conversations as a result of them offering you a gigabyte of storage and the ability to send 15 to 25 megabyte email attachments. That's all it took. I'm going to read some of the comments here because the reason we live in the world that we live in is not because of some crazy red pill evil conspiracy with the you all nothing thing and the Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. At the end of the day, none of that stuff would be able to take place if it wasn't for us. We fight amongst ourselves. We are not united. And if we were united, we would be able to make the demands from the manufacturer that would allow us to actually have our freedom back and not live in this dystopian world. So I'd like to read some of the comments that demonstrate what I'm talking about here in my argument. So this is a person who said the following with regards to the BMW software as a service, suspension as a service, after you've gotten the suspension in your car that you paid for. So what? If you go to a football stadium, the seats at the bottom cost the same to make as the ones at the top. In fact, the ones at the bottom are probably cheaper to make. But what you're paying for is the value to you. Either you pay it or you don't. I'm not going to defend it as cheaper. I'm going to defend it as a voluntary market transaction. If you don't want to pay for the better seats in the football stadium, don't pay. That doesn't give you the right to start violating contract terms, like paying for the cheap seats and then trying to sit in the expensive ones. They're running a business and they're doing what they think is profitable. If you don't like the product at that price, don't be their consumer. So the few things to go over in this corporate bootlicking simping statement here. The first is that we are not talking about, when it comes to the scarcity here, I'm not talking about that communistic idea that there's artificial scarcity with regards to resources and everything else, and that all of us would be able to just have whatever the hell we wanted if only we got rid of capitalism. I find that to be a bunch of bull. Here we're talking about actual genuine scarcity. If I want to sit a certain distance from the symphony orchestra and I want to sit at a certain angle from that symphony orchestra, we don't have the technology yet based on modern physics for multiple people to be able to occupy the same space at the same time. That doesn't work. It's not possible yet. So if I want to sit in that front row seat, what you're paying for in this case is essentially the ability to sit this distance from the orchestra, for your ears to be that distance from the orchestra, your eyes to be that distance at this particular angle. Two people cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So this is different from a case where we're talking about the opposite of scarcity. We're talking about your car actually has the parts in it already. We're not even talking about a case where there's only this number of suspensions. So we have 1 million customers that want this vehicle, but we have 500,000 suspensions, and because the supply and demand are out of whack, you wind up paying more to get that particular suspension, and other people don't get access to it. We're talking about the opposite of scarcity, where when you buy the car, there is no scarcity. You literally are getting the suspension with the car already. It's physically there. The second thing that we have to talk about here that's really important is this concept of trying to sit in the expensive seats after getting the cheap seats. There's two things that are wrong with this. So the first thing is, if I purchase cheap seats and then I go to sit in the expensive one down there, the person that paid to have front row seats has now been robbed of their viewing experience. They're not going to be able to attend the orchestra and sit within that angle and distance to the orchestra that they wanted because I have stolen their seat. I'm using the definition of steal literally. I'm not even talking about it when somebody says that piracy is stealing or any of that, which it isn't. you've literally taken the space that they have paid for. You're occupying it, because two people cannot occupy that space at the same time. That's theft. Now, when it comes to BMW and being able to get access to the suspension in your car, when I said it's time to pirate a car in the title, you literally own the suspension already. So not only A, do you own it already because you paid for it, but secondly, you are not stealing something that belongs to somebody else because it's your suspension. One of the responses that I thought was great to this as well, when we're talking about this concept of artificial scarcity versus real scarcity, is this comment. It's more like everybody has front row seats, but you have to pay a subscription so that a BMW representative doesn't stand in front of you blocking your view. And this is the fundamental problem with how progress worked in the past versus how progress works now. And we're going to get to that as my last point here. Progress in the past used to meant that you got something better and you immediately had the results of getting something better. Whereas today, progress means we've already figured out how to give you something better at the same price or cheaper than what we gave you before, but we are going to paywall access to it. We're going to give you a color television, but we're going to keep it as a black and white TV unless you pay for the unlock code to be able to get access to that. And that's something that you didn't have the ability to do because every device wasn't connected back in the day. But because everything's connected now, we have the ability to block off your ability to utilize your hardware. We didn't have this type of DRM and DMCA Section 1201 bullshit that actually make it illegal to do so. If somebody actually figures out how to get access to this, if somebody manages to crack their car so they can get access to the hardware they already bought and paid for under Section 1201 of the DMCA, they can actually be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for being able to get access to what they bought and paid for, which I find insane. Being able to utilize the suspension that is in your car is no way to analogize that to this instance, because using the suspension in my car does not deprive anybody else of their suspension. So this really comes down to that piracy argument when it comes to stealing. You have less argument to make with regards to the whole piracy is stealing argument. Technically, piracy is not stealing, it's copyright infringement, because all I've done if I go on SoulSeek or Usenet is I have received content without providing the people who made that content with monetary compensation for it. In this case that I'm discussing, I have not paid for that content. The person who has created that has not been compensated. I'm using it without paying them. But with the car, I paid for it. I gave you the $73,000 for the car, and you gave me the hardware in exchange for me giving you that $73,000. This is different than if I download a Tori Amos Blu-ray and I do not compensate any of the people that were responsible for creating it or the artist for the work that they did that went into creating that Blu-ray. Now, you can say that there's a moral issue with that. Personally, the reason I pirate is not because of that. It's because I want to actually have an experience free of DRM. I want to have an experience where I don't have to wait a week or two for my Tori Amos Blu-ray to show up so I can rip it with my BDR 2213. I may want to pay for that full price, but I also don't want to wait a week, so I will download a copy in the meantime that may not be the highest quality, but I do want to compensate the creators. Here with BMW, with the piracy, I'm not depriving the person who had that file of their file. That's why that's not stealing. Copyright infringement. When I download a file, the person who originally has the file still has it, so it's not stealing. Here, you're not depriving somebody of their suspension, nor are you depriving the manufacturer of their money, because you paid the manufacturer already. The manufacturer has been compensated for that suspension. Now, people have said, well, this is a way of actually making it cheaper by making it available to everybody and then putting it in the car. But you have to understand that there's nobody out there in the world that's a major publicly traded company that's going to give you something for free. That doesn't exist. When it comes to this, BMW is not giving you a suspension for free. That's not happening. None of these companies are giving you that for free. They are not losing money on the vehicle as a result of giving you that suspension. That suspension is baked into the cost of the car. When people say that you haven't paid for it because you didn't pay for the subscription, that's completely full of shit, because what you're doing when you say that is you're implying that the BMW CEO, out of the goodness of his heart, is providing you that suspension in the car for free. That after they've paid for all those materials and the resources and the bare earth metals and minerals that went into that particular suspension, that they are paying for all of that and then putting it in the car without being compensated by you. And that's just complete and utter bullshit, because that would never happen. The next thing I want to go over, the third part, is this idea about how progress is now. So one of the things I talk about when it comes to right to repair is when somebody says that there is danger involved in repairing some of the devices that I repair, they're technically correct, but they're misleading you by not talking about the way the culture was many years ago. So for instance, there was one time when I was replacing a MacBook Air screen for an A1466 many years ago, and I cut myself. With older screens, the screen was all one part, and I could just screw it in. And that was that. It was fairly easy. I'm never going to cut myself replacing one of those screens. On the devices that came out in 2010, starting with the A1369 and A1370, what happened is they have the LCD cell, that's the part that makes the image, and it is adhesed into the display assembly, and it's separate from the backlight layers, it's separate from the LED part that actually lights it up, the LED lights, and it's separate from all the backlight diffuser layers that properly diffuse the light, so the screen's light looks proper instead of just looking like a total mess. So it's very, very difficult because when the screen cracks, you're not simply taking out this assembly and then putting in a new one. I actually have to remove this thing with one of those Utrecht art supply store spatulas very slowly down the line, and if there's any kinks in that section or any pieces of glass that were already broken, I then have to remove those without cutting myself. And there's one time where I did cut myself, and because I had taken a particular pill that day, I forget if it was an allergy medication or something else, it was one of those things that makes it harder for your blood to clot, so I literally wound up bleeding for 4 hours. I thought it was gonna, that was not a fun weekend, but you could hurt yourself. Or for instance, with a lithium-ion battery, technically a lithium-ion battery does have the ability to explode. But when we're talking about lithium-ion batteries, a 3.7 volt battery in a phone, I'm not, again, to be clear, I'm not saying I want that to explode in my pocket and I'm not able to take it out, but there's a limit to how much damage that's going to do in most scenarios. Again, a paper cut, lithium-ion battery for a car, giant fire, lithium-ion battery for a phone. We don't talk about the risk of safety issues versus freedom the way that we used to. So 100 years ago, and even today, you're able to replace the brake pads in a 6,000-pound truck that can go 80 miles an hour. And we totally accept that. That's baked into the culture. That's kind of already been there. It's grandfathered in, because 100 years ago you were able to do that. So to try and make a cutoff and say nobody is allowed to replace their brake pads on a vehicle that weighs more than 45 pounds, nobody would accept that because we're culturally used to the idea of being able to do this. But when new devices come out, that's when we change the paradigm. So when we went to personal computers, standard desktop computers, where you could install any operating system of your choice, to smartphones, we switched over from being able to install any app that you want, iPhone, only being able to install an application from a store. Being able to install an application and being able to sell direct to your customer, 30% fee, and they can say no to you even being able to offer the application. The ability to install Linux, FreeBSD, Windows, whatever you want, you can only install our operating system because the bootloader is locked. Like, you see how that works? With each generation with technology, it winds up getting locked down more, and we accept it because we think it's different. An Android phone is a computer. An iPhone is a computer, same as this. It's a smaller version of what I have here. The architecture is different, but there's absolutely no reason to have those losses in freedom. But we have those losses in freedom because we accept it. And that's something that's happening here as well. So when we look at how technology used to progress over the years, this is something that used to happen without these types of limitations. You used to be able to have these types of progress and nothing like this would happen. When we went from a black and white television to a color television, they were selling you a color television. The hardware was present for color, so they gave you color. We didn't have this type of progress where the color television was sold, but it still limited you to black and white, and if you paid a fee, you could then unlock the ability to use the color hardware in your television set. A lot of hardware nowadays that is sold, it's just not like that. Imagine that we were dealing with crumple zones. Just think about the fact that a car from 35 years ago is considerably less safe than your average vehicle that you're in today if you get in a crash. Can you imagine if there was a crumple zone package where your car would be more safe as a result of you buying an extra package? When these advancements in technology came out, they were made available to everybody. We figured out how to make the thing better. It's not costing us more money. Here you go. That's progress. That's the way stuff used to work. If they could get away with that, if NHTSA weren't on their ass, they probably would try to get away with that. They probably would try to make it so that your crumple zone or these safety features only work if you pay this extra money, even though the shit's built into the car. And if it was physically possible for them to figure out how to make the properties of that metal only work if you bought the proper application on the BMW App Store, they probably would. When I buy a Rotel amplifier, if I get a Rotel 10, like a 1070 or a 1040 amplifier, it's not like it's not this nonsense where I could have a Rotel RB1090 that does 700 something watts a channel into a 4-ohm load, but I only get that if I pay a fee. And even if the argument were to be made that it was cheaper, that's not how it works. They wouldn't give me that amp for cheaper. They would still charge me the $2,000 that a Rotel RB1090 cost, but they would give me lower wattage until I unlocked it. The reason that I know this to be true is because vehicles nowadays have not got down in price. As a result of this, you're not seeing cost savings because they're baking the ability to manufacture the vehicles in a more streamlined way with a more lean supply chain. The cost of a BMW M3 is not going down to you. The cost of a BMW X7 is not going down to you. The cost of my ceiling fan is not going down as a result of them streamlining the supply chain by having an integrated LED light that is proprietary into the fixture. That's not just because they don't have the separate parts of the socket and the wiring for it and the bulbs and everything. That's not making it cheaper to me. It may make it cheaper to them, but it doesn't make it cheaper to me. The same thing with the TV example. Like we're not. That's not the way technology used to progress. Nowadays, when technology progresses, you don't get the benefit of it. They still keep you on the old shit, but they expect you to pay extra or a subscription to get access to what you already bought and paid for. This wasn't a thing. If you bought a Lansing 604E speaker in the 40s or the 50s, that would not sound like those little shitty gramophone speakers from the 20s unless you paid a fee to unlock it. When the Lansing 604E came out, it just sounded better than everything else. It was naturally better, and you just got the benefit immediately. It didn't sound like some shitty horn speaker coming out of a crappy 1920s record player. In conclusion, I believe that progress used to be something that continued to go up along with freedom. And now you have progress going up while freedom goes down. Are we better off now than we were 30 to 50 years ago with regards to a lot of technology? Yes, we are. Does that mean that we should accept the fact that freedom is going down with technology going up and that this used to not be the way it worked? No, I don't think we should. Simply pointing to the fact that today an air conditioner is more efficient than an air conditioner used to be, simply because we point out that cars are more efficient or that cars have better crumples and all that other stuff, doesn't mean that we should ignore the fact that we're losing freedom along with it. Yes, a modern smartphone is faster than a computer from 35 years ago. It just is. But that doesn't mean that simply because that is a technically better device that is more efficient in every way, that we should also not notice the fact that we can't install an operating system that we want to install on it anymore and that the shit spies on you all the time. I think it's important that we push back against these things. And above all, the biggest problem that I see here is that we're not together. We're not united. As long as we're not united, we're never going to get what it is we're looking for. As long as there is a simp, as long as there is a bootlicker in the YouTube comment section, we are never going to be able to get back our freedom, our privacy, or our ability to say that we own what we bought and paid for. I firmly believe this is not some sort of evil conspiracy amongst a bunch of people sitting in a room. It's us. We suck. And if it is an evil conspiracy, a bunch of people in a room smoking and talking about how they're going to remove ownership, the only reason they're able to even do that, the only reason they could even consider that or bring it up is because of people like this. If people like this didn't exist, that would never happen. But people like this do exist. And as a result of people like this, not just being the person in my comment section that comments regularly, but that's the norm outside of my community, that's what you get. This channel is a very small representation of the world. It's 2 million subscribers. The viewership rate is something like 1 or 3% of the people that are actually subscribed that view the content. And we have a world with over 4 billion people. And unfortunately, a lot of them think like this. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. And to anybody that marks my koi fish as an advertisement, I will find you. I will track you down. I will throw you in that pond, and you will be eaten by a school of angry, vicious piranhas. And I will film it. Watch me. Think about it. Think about it.
But yeah, some very good points about sort of enablers which are enabling these, these companies that are basically just squeezing everything out of us, putting things behind paywalls, subscriptions, and like I said, services that we once had in the base price that are now, just locked behind. And it's enablers that, they're enabling it. They're bootlicking. And like he says, as long as that we don't have unity between ourselves, these things will continue to happen, which is, we just need to sort of sort of collectively take a step back and then see what we want and how we can get there, really. I believe a lot of these things can be solved like very quickly if we all came together and just agreed on to do like one sort of action, like, stop buying this for you know, well, like a, well, in a protest kind of way, but like a peaceful, like, you know, if we don't want to pay it, just, you know, if we all just collectively stop paying for like a service like that, you know, they'll quickly change their minds. But it's getting us all to do it simultaneously, because as long as there is still people, you know, paying for these things, I'm not saying that those people are bad for paying these subscriptions and whatnot, but we'd all have to collectively unite together and bring those things to an end, really. So I need someone to, like, you know, command things and say, oh, we need to do this, do that, and then, but like I say, you know, we're all on separate sides here, and we're all, you know, I'm not listening to you because you're on this side and I'm on this side. You know, we need to take the sides down, just get rid of the fence between us and just all come together, really. But yeah, that's about it for, I mean, if you want to check out more information on Narcissists, yeah, Dr. Ramani was a big help. I mean, a lot of the narcissistic recovery communities are very wholesome, actually. It's yeah, they're all pretty good. There's some good content out there because there's different types of narcissists, like grandiose, covert, also known as vulnerable narcissists. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to make more specifically on narcissists in this, because there is already a lot of content out there. Because when I left my job, I didn't know what I wanted to do, really. I mean, I thought about making narcissistic recovery content, but there was already a lot out there, so I wanted to do something a bit different. So I wanted to sort of tell my story and tell the things that got me to this point, things I learned along the way, including people that, you know, give me advice, or like YouTube videos I've watched, like, which is why I'm including them. And yeah, I'm just trying to paint a bigger picture, really. But yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.